Good morning, Sonoma County Alliance. It's great to see everybody. I was actually out of town for 2 weeks earlier this month, and it was so wonderful to come back to Sonoma County, to come back home. We have a fantastic program again this month, and my name is Janet Connors. I'm your 2023 president. Before we begin, I'd like to ask Michelle Boone if she's here to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. I'd like to make a couple of announcements and updates and thank yous. Thank you to Don Mills for sound ideas for our videos. I'd like to thank you to our pop-up sponsor this morning, Ann Morkel. A big thank you to Ty Mooney and Tony Alvarez for all of your efforts on making our new website a reality. And Tony, for your guidance in this process. Thank you also to our programs committee for bringing forth these great programs. Please respond to the programs poll that went out yesterday. Your feedback is valued and important. And then also, please remember, and we're doing a great job these last couple of months to pre-register for our events, even if you're prepaid for the year. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ty Mooney for her update.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's a nice day today. So I just want to give a few updates. One, our calendar is up on our new website. If you haven't visited and you are a member, there's a ton of new perks. There's discussion forums, there's apps that you can connect to give you a directory on your phone so you can make calls to members that you want to speak with and network with. So we'll do more on the app next week, but go check out the website. If you're a member, log in. If you have an issue, please give me a call, shoot me an email, and we'll get you a login. On the calendar, you'll see that we have our May 3rd event, which was swapped with today. For the water, we went to education. So we're excited to have Dr. Carter here to talk about state of education. Obviously, there's a lot on everyone's mind, so it should be a great program. And then May 4th, we have our skate pack golf tournament. It is limited spots, so please make sure you register now. You can do that on our website. We still have foursomes available. And of course, we have June 10th, which is our Bocce for Books, which we're going to get a little update on in the self-introduction, so I won't go too deep into that. However, I do want to say the reason you should attend is because the Education Committee is out there doing amazing things like this. This is a book vending machine. This is one of two placed in low-income schools that will help alleviate the financial burden that these students are facing in these low-income communities and help encourage reading and education. So we're really excited. If you're in the Education Committee, can you just stand up? And can we give a round of applause? Fundraisers like Bocce for Books is what funds these special projects that are so near and dear to our hearts. So on that note, join a committee. I feel like I say this every time, but seriously, join a committee. This is the bread and butter of the work that we do here at the Alliance. And it's so important that your voice and unique experience are in these committees to help us push that forward. We have a ton of committees. If you want a new one, let me know, we'll make it. Well, I'm not going to lead it, but I appreciate the person who volunteers to lead it. And also a huge thank you to our new and renewing members. We are so glad you are here today. We're so glad you're here with the Alliance. Again, we need to continue to grow and diversify our membership. This is on all of us to help bring in new voices that will elevate our organization. So please do that. And a great path to do it is to join the membership committee. They are out there recruiting. They're making sure everyone feels welcome. They're doing calls and emails every day. And I'm so proud to be on that committee. If you're on that committee, can you please stand? Special shout out to Ryan and Allie, the chairs, and Danny. You're having so much work. As we do self-introductions, I'm going to ask that everyone that's a chair of a committee says that they are, so that way if people are interested, they know how to get a hold of you and they can come see you and join the work that you're doing. And I think that's it. Yes, thank you guys.
And Kimberly, would you help us with self-introductions?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kimberly Waite with Fidelity National Title and your immediate past president of the Alliance.
Good morning, I'm Grant Davis, the general manager at Sonoma Water, and I'm going to my right to Linda.
Lynn Rosselli, Sonoma Water, Water Agency Administrative Services Division Manager.
Jake Spalding, Sonoma Water. I'm the finance manager.
Good morning, Brad Sherwood, Assistant General Manager, Sonoma Water, Business Services and Government Affairs. Also in my private life, incoming president of the Northwest Chamber of Commerce. So see you at our future chamber events.
Good morning, I'm Jennifer Burke with Santa Rosa Water.
Good morning, I'm Pam Jean with Sonoma Water. I'm the Assistant General Manager of Water and Wastewater Operations.
Good morning, I'm Don Seymour. I'm a Deputy Chief Engineer at Sonoma Water. I oversee our water resource planning initiatives.
Great representation here, thank you.
Please remember, if you are a guest, to give Kimberly your business card.
McKinley, Frankie, Architect.
I'm Marlene Soyland Management, and I have an esteemed guest with me this morning, Tony Corman Development, past president, 19, when we were all young.
Good morning, Mick Menendez, co-chair of the Education Committee. Jason, where's Jason Lee? Jason, the other co-chair, so very important. Got to know right there. You saw the vending machine that we did? We did that at Lincoln Elementary School. And we picked Lincoln because over 95% of the children that attend that elementary school receive subsidized lunches. So we try to put our money where it's needed the most. I just want to give an update on June 10th event, Bocce for Books at Taft Street Winery. Since we started this Bocce for Books event, we've raised and given away, we've raised more, but we've given away over $50,300. $50,300. Our sponsors for the upcoming June 10th event are certainly the Martini family in Taft Street, Ken LaFranchi, always there for us, Summit State Bank, thank you Janet. We have Joe Valera and Bright Ideas. They actually donated an auction item, which is a lamb. I'm sorry, you vegetarians, but a lamb. It's going to be butchered and packaged together, and I'm telling you, it's one of the auction items. It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, I guess we could. Some of the other auction items we have rounds of golf at Fountain Grove and Santa Rosa. We have dinner hosted by the I gotta go. Dinner hosted by the Education Committee, which would be myself, Jason. We'd be feeding everybody. We have bottles of wine. The cost, $500 to sponsor half a table, $1,000 for a full table. You have wine, you have bocce, you have excellent food. It's a great day. It's a lot of fun. June 10th. Join us.
Thank you, Mick.
Pete Lesker Engineers.
Cy Mooney, Sonoma County Alliance.
I'm Crystal Megan, I'm with 707 Promotions.
Chris Wilson with the Historic Railroad Square Association. Danny Sheehan, Friends of Smart.
A harder civil engineer, and I have to say, I love it when I sit at a table when I can't tell my wife who I sat with today.
Good morning, Lori Rooney, North Bay Biz Magazine. I have a guest today, Tabitha Bonetti Asker from Noble Notary Services.
Steve Bertelbaugh with Friends of Smart.
Good morning, Gina Lisa Tamayo, Jackson Family Wines.
Good morning, Anna Tamayo, Office of Assemblymember Connolly.
Good morning, Barry Palma with Newmark Commercial Real Estate. Good morning, Dick Dowd, past president of the Alliance and currently a member of the board of directors of the Alliance.
And chair of our water task force committee.
Conrad Fernandez, Fidelity National Title.
Sarah Abbottino, Fidelity National Title.
Artie Dexter, Leduc and Dexter, and Super Service Plumbing.
Morning, Greg Hurd, BKF Engineers.
Also, Century 21 Epic Real Estate Broker. Tony Alvarez, past president.
Hello, Mark Soylent, Soylent Company.
Brooke Wilmus with Stony Point Rock Quarry, Souls Plus, and Brown Grove. So,
Roy Martinez, Exit Strategies Group.
Linda Bone, South State Bank.
Ann Morkill, Laguna de Santa Rosa Foundation. Hi, I guess I get to get my 1 minute officially. I'm with the Laguna de Santa Rosa Foundation. I'm sorry. Our mission is to restore and conserve the Laguna de Santa Rosa, the wetland complex here in Sonoma County, and inspire the public to appreciate this wonderful natural resource. And it was a great day to be here because some of our main partners, Sonoma Water and City of Santa Rosa, were actually located on City of Santa Rosa property at Stone Farm. And we partner with both the city and Sonoma Water on habitat restoration along our creeks. And we do environmental education. And I just wanted to promote our Earth Day events. We actually have an art and garden tour at our Laguna Environmental Center off of Sanford Road. And we are collaborating with Hen House Brewing. We have a beer that's coming out called Sonoma Sunshine, which is an endangered plant here on the Santa Rosa Plain. So if you're out and about on Earth Day, want to see some nature art, native gardens, and then head over to Hen House for this new beer launch in support of the Laguna Foundation. Thank you. And thank you for being our pop-up sponsor.
Good morning, Ryan Bucksbaum, Next One Staff.
Mike Cook, Integra Landscape Architecture.
Katie Dillwood, Christopherson Builders.
Tony Spisman, 707 Promotions.
Marcus Navarra, 707 Promotions.
Frank Pitgrass, Commercial Real Estate and board member of California Trout.
Michelle Lashinsky, American Eye Credit.
Jeff Riley, Environmental Consultants.
Don Mills, Sound Ideas Media and Couvert Brewery.
Carly Rodriguez, Midstate Construction.
Chuck Root, Double Eagle Financial, where cash is still king.
Mark Nelson, Midstate Construction.
Good morning, Dennis Harder, retired. Gary Lentz, Loan Depot Home Loans.
Andre Brandt, Realty and Race Consulting Engineer.
Sean Jean, Realty and Race Consulting Engineers.
Justin Hunter, Holly Construction, and then I have a guest this morning, Larkin O'Leary from Common Ground Society.
John McHugh, Primerica Financial Services.
Dan Condren, member of Skate Hack.
Good morning, I'm Carolina from Seniors Inc.
Steve Click, Bauer Associates.
Rick Carlisle, BKF Engineers.
Mark Milan, Data Instincts, Public Outreach Consultants for Water.
Good morning, Mike Martini, Taft Street Winery.
Good morning, Teresa Scott with Western Health Advantage, and I have a guest with me today, Teresa Mangiapane from Pengrove and Northern Petaluma Living magazine, which is launching in June.
Good morning, George Udice, City Council, Myrna Park, and Sally Tomatoes.
Rob Sandville, KLH Consulting, and I am a member of the Alliance backup team. Brian Lane, Real Estate Services, and I am the co-chair of the golf tournament. And yes, now's the time. If you want to get involved, we've got a great tournament coming up in 4 weeks from tomorrow. And I'm also the chair and sergeant at arms of the Ty Mooney Fan Club.
Good morning, Jason Lee, Sonoma County Office of Education, co-chair of the
the Education Committee, and Mick did give me the other 10 minutes of his time, so I'm going to start.
Hi, Kevin Zuko, CFA Structural Engineers.
Good morning, Katie Hillenmeyer, Providence Santa Rosa Memorial Hospital and co-chair of the Communications Committee. Good morning, Dana Ghirardelli with the Sonoma County Farm Bureau.
Ryan Farrell, Research Scientist, Pepperwood Foundation.
Good morning, Sloan Shen, Pepperwood Foundation.
Good morning, Ernest Berghoff, broker and CEO at Berghoff Realty.
Mark Hale, Carlisle Macy.
Kurt Nichols, formerly Carlisle Macy, retired past president.
Warren Drennan, attorney with Spalding, McCullough, and Tansel.
Good morning, Howard Dalton, and this month I'm wingman to Brian and Scott Kincaid on the golf tournament.
Phoebe Ellis, Lace House Linen.
Good morning, Richard Marzo, Lace House Linen.
Good morning, Julie Dempsey, Coldwell Banker Realty.
Todd Mendoza, Coldwell Banker Realty and co-chair of the Communications Committee.
Good morning, Gabriel Cox, Personal Perspective.
Good morning, Ryan Kelly, WSI Smart Marketing and co-chair of the Membership Committee with Allie.
Michelle Boone, current director of Sonoma County Alliance and currently looking for work.
Hello, Tawny Tosconi, Tosconi Event Management Solutions, and the CEO at the Sonoma Marin Fair.
Dale Schroeder, Boys and Girls Clubs of Sonoma Marin.
Haley Bly of Boys and Girls Clubs of Sonoma Marin.
Good morning, Keenan McCullough of MP Law, Transactional Law Firm.
Good morning, Melinda Rivera with Pacific Gas and Electric.
Good morning, Christopher Perez, owner of Core Electrical, board member of the North Bay Black Chamber of Commerce, a member of the 100 Black Men of Sonoma County, and my guest today is Arthur Cheney, the president of the 100 Black Men of Sonoma County.
Good morning, Doug Williams, retired. I'm Jack Pollard, chairman of the Progressive Tribal Alliance.
Jeff Alvarez with WSI Smart Marketing.
Morning, Aaron Smith with Adobe Associates.
Thank you, everyone. Did I miss any of our guests with business cards? We are going to do a drawing. Just want to make sure I've got all of our guests today's business cards. I'm not seeing any hands up. Oh, we got one. We have one up here. Thank you, thank you. Thank you to all of our guests for being here this morning. Oh, perfect.
We have two raffle prizes, so you can really do put them in here. So we have two raffle prizes this morning. The first is Don Seymour, from Sonoma County Water. And the second is Anna Tamayo. So, thank you, Kimberly. Before I introduce our speaker today, I wanted to take a moment and recognize the Sonoma County Alliance Water Supply Committee. The Water Supply Committee was formed last year to become informed about water issues that impact the business community in Sonoma County. Its mission includes being involved with decision and policy makers, becoming educated, and bringing information forward to the Alliance leadership and membership. The committee has been following local water supply and resiliency efforts, as well as statewide trends. A variety of water experts have attended their monthly meetings, providing a deeper look at water issues. Sonoma Water recently made a presentation to the committee, which the committee felt the entire Alliance membership would benefit from hearing directly. Committee members, and I'd like them to stand, include co-chairs Dick Dowd and Marlene Soyland, Ross Liscombe, Ken LaFranchi, Lisa Badenport, Mike Martini, Mark Hale, Art Dykey, Brian Ling, Kurt Nichols, Tawny Tiscani, and Harry Davidian. A heartfelt thank you for your time, your efforts, and support of the Sonoma County Alliance, and for making this program possible. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Grant Davies, for our discussion on exploring the future of water supply. As General Manager of Sonoma County Water, Grant is responsible for Sonoma Water's core functions of providing drinking water to 600,000 residents in portions of Sonoma and Marin counties, and wastewater management for 8 zones and districts throughout Sonoma County. Mr. Davies and his team also maintain nearly 100 miles of streams and detention basins for flood protection and manage a nationally recognized Russian River watershed restoration program for the benefit of 3 federally listed fish species. And I hand it over to Grant Davies now.
Thank you, Janet. Looking forward to your presidency this year. Off to a wonderful start. Well, good morning, everyone. We do have a full complement of Sonoma Water staff because anybody that's in your line of work knows that it takes a village to run a water agency. I brought the A-team today, and I'm so proud to have them here with me. First and foremost, Pam Jean, our Assistant General Manager, and Jake Spalding, working in finance. Those two are going to be part of the presentation. But at the table here, we got Don Seymour, Lynn Roselli, Brad Sherwood, and our counterpart, Jennifer Burke from the city of Santa Rosa. We're a wholesaler, and we wholesale water to retailers. The biggest customer is Santa Rosa, so I'm really proud that you're here today, and I hope you'll have an opportunity to also present information to not just the Water Supply Committee, but to the whole membership. And feel free to jump in with any clarifying or information you'd like to see. We wanted to make this pretty brief so we can get into a Q&A, which is what we'll aim for toward the end of the presentation. But as Janet said, the Water Supply Committee, we had a really good couple of meetings this past year. And the last one dealt with what it's going to take to ensure resiliency for our water supply into the future. And part of that is making sure that you're making the investments that are required to maintain this incredible investment that has been made by the residents of Sonoma and Marin County. Most of you probably know this, but it bears repeating, that Warm Springs Dam would not have been built without the Sonoma County Alliance. In fact, it was the Alliance advocacy that got that dam through a very difficult process and ultimately built. And so, in many ways, our water supply is in large part due to the foundation of the Alliance. And I say that every time I come here because it's the truth. Can you imagine what this place would be without Warm Springs Dam, Lake Sonoma? It's 3 times the size of Lake Mendocino, our smaller reservoir to the north, which was originally built. We co-manage that with the Army Corps of Engineers. But our water supply, in large part, can be traced all the way back into the Alliance. So thank you for that leadership back then and your continued leadership today when it comes to water supply. I could not be more proud of an organization that lives every day to provide clean, reliable drinking water to 600,000 customers. And our retailers are our close partners, and you'll hear more about that today. So I would like to just quickly set this up and get right into the fact that we have 2 large reservoirs, Lake Mendocino and Lake Sonoma, that we rely on primarily for our water supply. But we don't supply to everybody. Many of you have been involved with the issues over the years with 3 groundwater basins. The Santa Rosa Plain, which is where now is the largest one of those, but we've also got Petaluma and the Sonoma Valley. It was a law back in 2014 that was signed by Governor Jerry Brown that created the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And we have been working to securitize those groundwater basins ever since. Highly collaborative. It requires folks that they stay involved and that we actually are able to sustainably manage these important underwater aquifers and recharge those aquifers. And hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about that a little bit today. So our system, in large part, we'll probably talk a little bit about today, probably in the Q&A, about Potter Valley. The Potter Valley project has been in the news quite a bit. It's a facility been owned and managed by PG&E for over 125 years, effectively, once it was built. And it is a contributing part of our water supply, and we've been talking to the committee about preparing for the future of what's the outcome of that going to be. PG&E, who's represented here today, has indicated that they're going to surrender that asset, the Potter Valley Project, which is basically Lake Roseberry in a smaller reservoir, Cape Horn Dam down below. And it's going to have an impact, and we have to do our best to prepare for that. And you'll hear a little bit more if we get into a Q&A about what the current status of the Potter Valley Project is. I heard that there's a board member from Cal Trout. We've been working with Cal Trout quite a bit on a successful outcome to make sure that we transition that facility in the long run for both the Eel River and the Russian River, and we're committed to doing that. 2 dams are our primary water source. We take that water and bring it down into the community of Windsor, Santa Rosa, Roanoke Park, Cotati, Petaluma, and then down into North Marin, and ultimately about a quarter of the Marin Municipal Water District's supply. Marin Municipal pays more for their acre-foot of water, and that's something I'd like to point out to folks that live in Sonoma, that we are beneficiaries of Marin, which takes most of their water in the wintertime when it's available, and we get that to them and they pay more, and that's an investment that goes into our system. So a very important part of water supply in Sonoma County and the region with regard to that. This is just a schematic of the transmission system that we actually use once water comes down from Lake Mendocino through the Russian River, which is our natural pipeline. You've heard me talk about that in years past. We have Lake Sonoma and Dry Creek below that. We've had a lot of opportunity. Dry Creek is the tributary to the Russian River below Lake Sonoma. And it's those 2 reservoirs and our management that is what delivers this clean, reliable water supply to our customers. Pam is going to go into some of the challenges and what we are faced with currently, but I do want to just acknowledge that when about a month ago when we were talking about this with Dick and the committee, we were looking at rates and the need to go pass on water rates that are going to allow us to build a significant number of projects, make sure that we could then move into hazard mitigation projects that are critically necessary. And it's mainly about the amount of water that we sell. You'll hear this a little bit. So it's going to be a little bit of a 101 on what our challenges are. Jake is going to talk in specifics about what our rates are going to look like. And it's basically a $2 to $3 a month, depending on the household increase. And that's why that's in this presentation. But as soon as we're done there, we're going to go into a Q&A and allow you to ask whatever questions you have and do as much dialogue as we can this morning, because I think that's an important part of the equation. So with that, I'm going to pass this on to Pam.
Morning. Thank you again for having us here this morning. So, yes, we're on the right slide. It's a little weird not having the slides in front of me, so bear with me here. Sonoma Water, as Grant talked about, has a fairly robust water system. However, we are facing many challenges within that system. Most of the facilities are 45 to 65 years old and have expended much of their useful life. And we liken this to an old car. As everybody knows, if you drive a car, as your car gets older, it takes a lot more maintenance as it increases in age. And while we implement ongoing preventative maintenance programs, corrective maintenance efforts and emergency repairs have really increased a lot over the last few years within our water transmission system. In addition, the effects of age, our water transmission system also is vulnerable to an array of natural hazards, those including earthquakes, fires, flood, and earthquakes have really been identified as the single most greatest threat to our system in terms of natural hazards, because they could cause extensive damage and long-term service disruptions. So the information we're presenting today includes efforts to address these challenges. Within our budget that we're proposing for the next year, we have about $40.4 million budgeted for operations and maintenance projects. These are the projects that are sort of near and dear to my heart. And we have highlighted a few of these high priority projects in the slide here so that you can see what they are Some of those include a multi-phase aqueduct cathodic protection program. This is to protect our aqueducts, which are large pipelines that serve our customers, from corrosion. The other project that I want to highlight is a very large $88 million 10-year project to recoat our tanks as well as repair them. We do have some work to do there, and this will specifically help also with security at those sites. So that's a new program for us. So these are highlights of our projects, and they're integral to maintaining our aging infrastructure and ensuring the reliability of our water system. On the capital side, we've completed and will be completing a couple of key hazard mitigation projects in this fiscal year. And we've budgeted about $6.3 million for these types of projects next year. We've been able to use more than $10 million in FEMA grants to fund numerous hazard mitigation projects. We're seeking federal and/or state funding for other hazard mitigation projects. The capital project budget, oh, this is backwards, sorry. That was supposed to be with the last slide. Let me go back and I will speak to this correctly. The capital budget also includes $5.9 million in capital projects to continue to build resiliency and reliability, with approximately $1.1 million in grants going into this particular area. When we add up the capital budgets for hazard mitigation and components with those shown on the slide, we have a total capital budget of about $12.2 million. Make sure I'm on the right one, yes. We have about $9.7 million for work that we do on the biological opinion, water supply planning, and water conservation or water use efficiency. We continue to make progress on the Dry Creek Habitat Enhancement Project. That's the photo on the right on this slide, on phases 4, 5, and 6 associated with that project. And we've managed to have a significant cost savings to our water contractors on that project, because the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is participating at 65% cost share for the last 3 phases of the project itself. We've also included a budget of $150,000 match contribution for the Potter Valley project that Grant was just talking about, for a water forum. We're calling it the Russian River Water Forum. We have a grant application in with the California Department of Water Resources, and that $150,000 would match that. That would be the water contractor's match for that grant. If we're awarded a grant, we will also have a match provided from the County of Sonoma, the County of Mendocino, and the Sonoma Water Russian River Projects Fund, which is separate from the Water Transmission System funds. In addition to implementing a very robust and successful water conservation and education program, we are seeking almost $4 million under that same California Department of Water Resources grant program. And if awarded, that will facilitate implementation of numerous beneficial water conservation and reuse initiatives in the next year, actually probably the next 2 years. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jake to talk to you about how we get to the rates that we get to.
Thank you, Pam. So Jake Spalding, Finance Manager. So real quick, so each year, Sonoma Water, we develop a budget to meet our operations, maintenance, our capital needs, and also the regulatory demands on the system. We do this in a collaborative and transparent process with all the water contractors. We actually start quite early. We start in mid-January, and then we finally bring the rate to our board in April for adoption. The total proposed budget this year is going to be $68.3 million. That is offset by $18.15 million in grants, bond proceeds, and use of fund balance. I want to note this is actually $3.5 million less than our budget in the current fiscal year, and that's mostly due to some reductions that we took in an effort to keep the rate low. This chart that you see here just kind of outlines where the majority of our expenditures go. As you can see, about 59% go towards operations and maintenance. Another 18% goes towards capital projects, which are efforts to improve the system. 14% to the sub-funds, which Pam was describing as the efforts towards the biological opinion, water supply reliability, and also conservation efforts. And then finally, debt service at about 9%. What this proposed budget means on rates is, and this is for the prime water contractors served off our 3 main aqueducts. As Grant mentioned, we do have other customers that also pay different rates that are calculated in somewhat similar ways. But the 3 main aqueduct rates are going to be between 9.42 and 10.56%. You know, that is a higher rate increase than we have had in previous fiscal years. And I'll talk a little bit about how and why that's happening. You know, the water transmission system is actually pretty complicated. There are multiple funds in it. Each one of these funds has its own purpose, its own budget, its own rates. And then we compile all those to create the rates that the users eventually pay. This is all stipulated in an agreement that we have with all the water contractors called the restructured agreement. And it outlines which contractors pay which fees and how that all works out. The restructured agreement also does stipulate that our rates are fully volumetric. And this is going to be an oversimplification, but you know what that means is basically we take the cost of operating and maintaining our system, and then we divide that as is stipulated in the agreement by either the lesser of the last 12 months of deliveries or the last 3 years annual average. And where we find ourselves today is we've had 3 years of historic drought, and we've had historically low deliveries. So we are budgeting off a very low delivery number because the community has been saving and not using as much water as they historically did. What that means, because with the volumetric rate, is that you know deliveries are going to be lower, and so the rate increases are going to be higher. And that's even when we are proposing a budget that's $3.5 million less than the previous fiscal year. You know, so we calculate that more than 90% of the rate increase really is attributable to this lower delivery number. And the rest of it is really the increased maintenance needs that Grant and Pam were talking about on the system. While it's not an exact calculation, you know, Grant threw out the number. You know, what might it mean to residents in the area? It might mean $2 to $3 a month in rate increase. That's based solely on cost per acre foot. You know, it really depends on individual water consumption. And you know, as we said, we are forecasting lower deliveries, so we're not anticipating that everyone would have an impact like that. How do our rates compare to other water wholesalers in the area? Well, this is not an apples to apples comparison because every water transmission system is different. We all have different input costs, we all have different systems. But as you can see on the slide here, Sonoma Water is on the far left-hand side. We do still continue to have the lowest cost wholesale water in the Bay Area. You know, I would also note all these agencies, they're facing the same budgetary issues we have. They have the same infrastructure needs we have. And, you know, statewide, everyone has been having low deliveries with the drought and mandates by the state. So we have been talking to them that they're forecasting rate increases between 5.5 and 15%, meaning that, you know, we're not unique in the sense of where we find ourselves today. You know, Sonoma Water, we do understand the impacts that rate increases have on everyone who gets water through our water transmission system. You know, we did take efforts to reduce the budget as much as possible, while also honoring our responsibility to operate and maintain a reliable system. You know, to address the impacts that this low deliveries is having on our impacts, we did take a couple steps. You know, we did identify $2.4 million in non-routine maintenance projects that could be deferred. These are ones that, you know, our team analyzed and decided that we really didn't need to do these ones this fiscal year. We also trimmed budgets everywhere we could. You know, there has been some moderation in some of our input costs. We get a lot of our energy from large hydro projects. Those are now coming back online, luckily with all the rain that we've had. So we have been able to find some savings there. We also increased the use of grants, bond proceeds, and fund balance in the budget this year. And we've been utilizing, as Pam mentioned, you know, the Army Corps' cost share on all the biological opinion work in the Dry Creek area. We were really fortunate with our timing. You know, Sonoma Water does have a AAA bond rating. We were able to get out and bond recently for the water transmission system. We got about $15 million with a true interest cost rate of about 3.3% right before interest rates started going up, and that has allowed us to fund our capital program for next fiscal year 100% with bonds, grants, and use of fund balance, meaning that that's not impacting the rate at all this year for any of our customers. Lastly, I did just want to mention the water contractors also have a discretionary capital charge, and they use this to build fund balance for capital projects on the individual aqueducts. Some of the contractors did elect to reduce that this year compared to last year to bring the rate down a little bit more. Some of them didn't because they have needs on their aqueduct to fund projects in the near future, and they needed to build that fund balance up. I said lastly on the last one, but I'm going to say one more last thing. The budget this year, we're running under budget on deliveries this fiscal year. There continues to be, droughts continue to impact things. There's also been a slide along 101, which I'm sure many people have heard about, that is affecting deliveries to our Marin customers. And so we are anticipating somewhat of a shortfall. We're anticipating we're going to have to dip into our prudent reserve a little bit this year in order to make up the revenue shortfalls, which we're currently estimating between $4 and $6 million. But that's yet to be seen, and there might be additional sales coming up. The rate increase, like I said, it's between 9.42 and 10.56% this year. That is higher than our historical 5 and 10-year averages, but it really is necessary to fund the critical infrastructure projects. Make sure we have funds for operations and maintenance, and as Pam mentioned, fund water resiliency and also natural hazard mitigation projects that are integral to maintaining the system. So with that, I'll pass it back to Grant.
Jake, thank you very much. So there's a lot to go through there, I admit that. And so to not have to go into any further detail, we have right outside the front door there 2 handouts that I would, if you want more information. One is a basic primer on our water transmission system and our budget. So you have that, because basics what Jake just provided. It also has a copy of our 5-year strategic plan that was just adopted and supported by our board. So I'd also like you to take a look at that. It's pretty dry, but it's important that you see where we're headed, how we think about water supply. I think about next steps, and for us, I'm optimistic that we're going to be heading to our board of directors on the 18th of April to adopt these rates. As Jake mentioned, the water contractors voted on Monday to recommend to our board the adoption of these rates, and I want to thank the members that are part of that constituency, the elected officials, whether you're an appointed member to our Water Advisory Committee or a member of the council that has to help us provide the dollars to make the investments that we were just describing. So we did it in about 15 minutes. I promised that we would do this. What we're going to try and do is head down to our water agency table and have a round table of Q&A. I thought that was the best thing that we could do because we've got experts on our staff that can answer questions you may have right now. Pam and Jake, thank you. Why don't you join me down there and we'll do a Q&A if that's all right.
How do you want to do it? Want me to take the microphone and go around?
Yeah.
You want to take the microphone?
Yeah.
So who has the first question? Our guest from Austin, Mr. Coleman.
Well, thank you for the information. I have 2 questions. Grant, when you started, you asked sort of a rhetorical question, which was something to the effect that, can you imagine what Sonoma County would be had Warm Springs Dam not been built? So I looked at Google, and in 70, we had a population of 200,000, and in 80, we had 300, so 50% increase. By 1990, we had almost 400,000. So could you speculate what this county would look like and Marin County without the dam? That's my first question. And then Jake, I noticed in all of the information that you provided, I didn't see Marin County in there at all as far as rates and as far as contributions, so if you could address that.
Those are 2 really good questions. We could be here all morning. I actually hazard to guess what we would look like without Warm Springs Dam. I have a hard time. One thing is, you would not be having a wonderful lush green golf course here, but I can guarantee you that. I actually think it would be a very different world. Don Seymour, our deputy here, is probably capable of giving you a snapshot in terms of what it would mean, and maybe do a better job than I am. I'm going to hand it to him. Don's like, oh no.
Sorry, Don.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it would look actually more less developed than it was in 1950, 1960, 1940. Because along with not having Lake Sonoma and just depending on Lake Mendocino, we also had a tremendous amount of water being transferred through the Potter Valley Project from the Eel River in that time frame. And so on average, there was about 150,000 acre feet per year being transferred from that project. Today, there's less than 40,000 acre feet being transferred to that project. So not only do you not have Lake Sonoma, which really fills based on its own watershed, you have Lake Mendocino that has trouble filling on its watershed. I think you would also see greatly depleted groundwater systems. So the Santa Rosa Plain, Petaluma Valley, Sonoma Valley would have very depleted groundwater. It would be very bleak. So.
Do you want to take an answer to that? I mean, this is a tough one. Okay. Jennifer, I assure you, Jennifer will chime in once you get that. That's such a tough question. I'm going to actually have Lynn Roselli answer the one about Marin County on your second part.
Yeah, so as we've discussed already, we have this restructured agreement for water supply. Sonoma Water signs with all of the water contractors. There are 8 prime water contractors. North Marin Water District happens to be one of those 8 prime contractors. City of Santa Rosa happens to be our largest customer. And so most of the water that we deliver, the vast majority goes to City of Santa Rosa. But we do supply water also to North Marin and Marin Municipal Water District. Does that answer your question? Or
What about the rates? The funding, the revenue.
Sure, so they pay, each contractor pays a rate based on the terms of the restructured agreement for water supply. And they're complicated formulas, but North Marin Water District pays a particular rate based on the structure. Marin Municipal also pays its own rate, as well as all of the customers on the 3 aqueducts.
Higher or lower? What's higher? Are there impacted?
Yeah. I'm sorry?
The impacts to Marin, are they as great as they are to Santa Rosa and Sonoma County?
Impacts to the rates? Yes, their rates are higher. Their rates are higher than the rates that the 7 contractors pay in Sonoma County.
Grant, will you also mention the time of year that they take water and what they do with it versus, so it actually is helping you?
Yeah, I think that's the take-home question. Marin, for all its wonderful attributes, I grew up there, but they elected not to join in with the Warm Springs Dam and did not become a water contractor. And as a result, they don't pay some of the other fees that are required, and so their rate is considerably higher per acre foot. That's something I hope people realize, because long term, we want to keep moving Marin County's take in the winter months. We had about 13 atmospheric rivers, maybe 14 that hit us in the last 2 months. There's a lot of water in the system, and 2 years ago, when their reservoirs were depleted, we were able to get them water when we also had a high volumetric ability into that system. It was Petaluma that played a critical role in transferring the water down to Marin County, but they paid 15 million gallons a day was going down there to elevate their reservoirs. So they went into this last drought in pretty good shape, and we think that's the future of using their funds to help make prudent investments like groundwater banking and aquifer recharge. Marin can buy into that as part of our North Bay region, and so they are paying more. Their dollars will help us make investments that we may not have made otherwise.
Yeah, let me just add too that there's an economy of scale, right? I mean, we have we deliver 42,000 acre feet of water. Their water contributions help provide lower rates because it's a fully volumetric rate, right? So having that water delivered to them actually helps us finance and build more into the system.
Great, thank you. Good question.
I think I'm going to ask the question that I thought Tony was going to ask. Going back to the beginning of this group and the creation of Lake Sonoma, something this group takes a lot of pride in. I personally take pride in. My stepfather, Alan Forsyth, was one of the founders of this group who helped do that, and it's something he was very proud of in his life. But my question is, if somebody from the water agency came here maybe within the last year and talked about, somebody asked, how are we going to deal with this long term? Are there any big projects out there? And somebody mentioned the atmospheric rivers and being able to predict them better and not releasing water unnecessarily, and they said, that's going to add blah, blah, blah. My question is, 50 years hence, when you guys come here and talk to us, what's the moonshot for this generation that will allow us to feel just, thank God in 2025 or 2030 you did this. Is there another reservoir? How are we going to capture all this water that's coming down? What's that looking like?
Well, first of all, thank you for your dad and helping be part of this. It's a great question, really. You guys get up early so you can get that mind's working. I am going to lean on Don a little bit on this, but bear with me on this. I just got back from New York, and we were being asked, we were on the Delaware River with Department of Water in New York. They are looking at what we're doing out here with forecast-informed reservoir operations. And that's a long-winded word, but basically we're using better forecasts. We're able to tell when those atmospheric rivers, which is our form of extreme weather that comes in off the West Coast, we're better able to predict sometimes 5-7 days out when they're coming. And as a result, we've been working with our partners, the Army Corps of Engineers, to be able to utilize that information and make releases based off of much better scientific predictions. And we'll also be able to hold water back if those ARs are not going to hit above our reservoirs. And so as a result, I'll get this to Don in a minute. Don can go over the numbers and the volume, but essentially we do have our new reservoir. It did not require a huge investment in some large capital project. Those are probably going to be groundwater projects coming in. But for atmospheric rivers, the science and the coordination working with the Corps, the fish agencies, the state departments, we've been working for over a decade. And I want to describe this because it's that big. And Don can go into the numbers of what we have right now. And that will be the punchline. But New York's asking us because we figured it out. It was over a decade ago that we were up at Lake Mendocino, standing in what was a mud puddle at that time. It had just rained considerably back at the end of 2012, it was December 2012. And the Army Corps of Engineers, because their manual, it's called a water supply control manual, required them to vacate the water that came in, that went into the flood pool, to prepare for more rain. That rain never came. They released 25,000 acre-feet of water to vacate the reservoir, and we had not a drop for 2 more years. Can you imagine what that did to us? So we, at that time in 2013, dedicated ourselves, and it was our chief engineer, Jay Jaspers, primarily, along with Scripps Institution of Oceanography down in San Diego, came together to figure out how can we do better. You can't release that volume of water. That is more than half of what we send in an entire year. So for a decade, we've been working to come up and prove that you could use the science. You can hold more water back now than we could before, and there is an increment that we're able to bring into this coming year. We did it in Lake Mendocino. At that time, we're looking at 11,000 acre-feet of water that's sitting in Lake Mendocino right now because we're able to use advanced science, collaborate, and figure out the solution. I'm going to hand it to Dawn to talk about Lake Sonoma and where this goes next.
Yeah, thank you, Grant. Yeah, I would just say, as Grant mentioned, up until this FIRO initiative, the Corps had to release water that was in the flood control pool to get ready for that next event, even though maybe, advanced forecasts were suggesting that we're recommending that they weren't coming. They now, both at Lake Mendocino and Lake Sonoma, have a pool of water in the flood control pool that, at their discretion, if the forecasts are saying it's safe to retain that water, they're now able to retain water, this pool of water in both Lake Mendocino and Lake Sonoma. So in Lake Mendocino, as Grant mentioned, it's about 11,000 acre-feet. I don't know if you recall, but in 2020, we actually were heading into the most severe drought, driest 30 months on record. However, in February of that time frame, the Corps actually retained water in that FIRO pool, about 11,000 acre-feet. So into February 2020, as we went into this dry period, Lake Mendocino had over 80,000 acre-feet in the reservoir when, if it was being operated under their flood control manual, would have only been able to have 68,000 acre-feet. And so we went into that 30-month period. October 2021, Lake Mendocino got down to 12,000 acre-feet. So if we had not had that 11,000 acre-feet, along with other actions that Sonoma Water and the State Water Resources Control Board undertook during that period, Lake Mendocino would have gone dry. And that's Upper Russian River is the water supply for over 100,000 people. So people would have been struggling just to make health and safety needs. Right now, we're taking that FIRO initiative that started at Lake Mendocino, as Grant mentioned, in 2014. That's almost complete through an update of their flood control manual to formalize FURO operations at that reservoir and that FURO pool that the Army Corps can use. There is a deviation in place to the Flood Control Manual of Lake Sonoma, which is allowing the Corps at their discretion to store an additional 19,000 acre feet in that reservoir. And it's actually, the storage is actually above that FURO pool, and they're slowly trying to come down to the top. So, you know, just like the rest of California, we've seen extremes. You know, we had extreme drought last year, and we had the extreme snowpack up in the Sierras. You know, the Russian River is seeing that same change of extremes. Last year, combined storage in both the reservoirs was the lowest ever observed. At this time, combined storage in both our two reservoirs is the highest it's ever been. And as Grant mentioned, these weren't through big capital project investments. This was change of operations. So.
Any chance I'm going to get applause? No. Listen, this is probably outside of the discussion on rate increase, but it's a follow-up to the most recent question. And the agency, rightfully so, has a seat at the table on all issues that are water. And I think that's appropriate. You have a great relationship with your contractors. You have a great relationship with the rest of the community. As we look forward to the next 60 years, what is the role that you see Sonoma Water having in capturing, you know, when we see these periods of high flows, whether it's through diversion into direct recharge, flood recharge, reuse of recycled water, all of those kinds of issues to help ensure that the water supply is there in the future?
Mike, I'd give you an applause for that question. You know, my first response is, I'm sitting here with Jennifer, Dick Dowd, and many others, Russ Liscum. Best project in Sonoma County, from my point of view, beyond the two dams, is going to be the pipeline project up to the geysers. That was an amazing project, an engineering feat that you continue to pay dividends on year in and year out. And utilizing that to the maximum when that contract comes up, let's recommit ourselves to that wonderful effort. So congratulations on that. I think, Mike, to be honest about this, we are working on aquifer storage and recharge. And this is something, another message I'd like to leave the Alliance members with. We did such a good job of water conservation and efficiency over the last few years that the collective region benefited to the tune of $40 million of projects from the Department of Water Resources and grants, all the way from Cloverdale, Healdsburg, Windsor, down into Marin County. They specifically said because we did such a good job of carrying that on and reducing our diversions out of the Russian River during the multi-year drought, that those funds were awarded to us. So one is, we got 3 projects out of that for Sonoma Water, which are our aquifer recharge projects at the 3 wells that we have in the Santa Rosa Plain, Occidental Road, and Sebastopol Road, not far from here. We're going to be taking water when it's available, injecting that into the groundwater basins, and creating an account of sorts. And that will be used when you need it. And so a lot of the legwork and the collaboration that's going to be required, the governance that's going to be required, is coordinating with the groundwater sustainable management agencies, the districts that are going to be part of managing that. That's work to be done, because they're not easy. The state has awarded a lot of funding. One of the better projects I'm counting on is up in the Alexander Valley that you're involved with, Mike, and that is to see if you can't reverse the frost protection investments that have been made up in the folks along that river, turning those on when the river is running free, and being able to recharge the aquifer at that time, and be able to hopefully get that water into an area where it can be utilized later on when it's needed. So these are multi-year efforts. They're going to require multiple partners. They're going to require good engineering and sophisticated modeling to be able to account for it, but that's our future. It's probably not going to be large surface water reservoirs like Warm Springs or Lake Mendocino. They're going to be underground resources that are properly managed, that are going to help us as a region better make it through those dry periods. So we've already proved we can do it with Marin. We helped them through the drought. We now have funds to do 3 groundwater wells here, and I suspect there'll be more of that to come. Jennifer, I keep looking at you. If you want to weigh in or make a comment, you're also managing that. You're just right there. Well, yeah. I do want to offer you're part of our team.
Good morning. I was not planning to speak today.
Well, you're here.
The benefit of sitting with my colleagues. I would say for Santa Rosa as being the biggest customer for Sonoma Water, we have a great partnership. We're continuing to look at resiliency projects and reliability. And as the biggest customer, we're also a little concerned about that resiliency going forward. We are 95% reliant on Sonoma Water. And when those reservoir levels get to, the lowest ever in December of last year, that's incredibly concerning. We've also been extremely committed to demand management and water conservation in Santa Rosa through the last drought, this last drought period that we just had from June of 2021 through February. Our customers reduced water use by 18% above and beyond what they were using, which was 1.8 billion gallons of water that they saved. We actually have, I think, the lowest gallons per capita per day of any of the contractors. Used to be Roanoke Park. We finally beat them, haha, just kidding. I think we were down to 85 gallons per person per day last calendar year, and that is commercial, industrial, institutional, as well as water leaks. So that encompasses everything. To the point of the future, as I mentioned, we're 95% reliant, and when we see those reservoir levels really low, we have actually started our own resiliency study that we're calling our Water Future. And I know a number of you in this room are participating, and we greatly appreciate that. And we're looking at all options, whether it's additional conservation to stormwater capture to groundwater recharge. We have some of our own groundwater wells to, increased recycled water to potentially potable reuse. So everything's on the table for us. Also, if we look at partnerships for potential desal in other areas, so we're looking at everything because I think, Mike, to your point, we have to, and we have to look at what our options are going to be to not only keep what we currently need to use, but we have a housing crisis, and how do we work together to have that? How do we continue to have a strong economy? How do we continue to support where we live? And so water is key. We recognize that, we take that very seriously, and so we're looking at what we can do to make it not only more resilient, but more reliable as well through drought conditions. So our goal is to find up to 30% of our water supply through this study so that we don't have to rely on that 30% from Sonoma Water if we can.
Thank you.
You sure you weren't planning on that?
I was not. I was completely.
It's wonderful. Thank you. That's absolutely accurate. We're working very closely on resiliency, a lot of studies. Many of you will be a part of that, finding the projects that we invest in next.
Right. I have two questions, and I hope they're both insignificant. There was a reference to security around the renovation of water tanks, which is just, that's what I had heard, so can you talk more about that, and is it significant? And the other thing I think about is if we had another year next year, like this year, would there be any adverse impacts financially that we usually don't think about?
Those are not insignificant questions, so I'm going to have Pam take the first one.
I'm just going to answer the second one. So with regards to what we're doing at our tanks, we, for a couple of years, many years, we're putting off doing work at our tanks because of trying to keep our rates down, and we just got to the point where we're like, okay, we're done, we're going, we have to do this work. So we have a new program that goes along with that, however, as you refer to as our security at those tanks. We do have security at the tanks, don't get me wrong. It's not like it's not existing right now, but it does need to be beefed up. And so we have actually a new employee that we just hired who's going to be helping us with that, not just security at our tanks, but security at all of our facilities, including the sanitation facilities that we operate. So not just our water, but our buildings that we reside in, as well as our sanitation facilities. So that's what we're hoping to do as part of the tank recoat maintenance and repair program, so.
So in terms of if there were another year of drought, yes, there would be some significant impacts. We have a lot of fixed costs. 90% of our costs are fixed. We've got pipes in the ground, we've got tanks. We have to pay for the maintenance of those facilities, those water treatment facilities. And so if there are, and because we have a fully volumetric rate, as deliveries go down, and we have to budget, as Jake mentioned, we have to budget based on the lower of the water deliveries from the prior year to forecast for a future year. So because it's a volumetric rate, if your deliveries continue to go down, the impacts are that you have to make some cuts somewhere. So you either cut capital costs, you cut some of your operations costs, and you have higher rate increases, which impacts our water contractors.
Thank you. We had another question over here.
I'm wondering how much of a role does groundwater play in our water supply? You talked a lot about Lake Mendocino and Lake Sonoma, but it sounds like you have a lot of plans revolving around groundwater. And related to that, is there any risk of us overpumping in years that are dry and having something like what's happening in the southern and central valley with land subsidence? And another kind of corollary question, while you're recharging these aquifers, I'm curious if if farmers have like land rights related to water. I know it's a very messy system in the Central Valley, but do we have something similar to that? And as we're adding water in, are they pumping it out for irrigation, or do they have? Is it very carefully managed how much water is taken out of the groundwater?
So as Grant mentioned, Sonoma Water has 3 wells in the Santa Rosa Plain, and they were originally constructed in response to the 1976 drought. Then 2 of them were reconstructed in the 90s, and they're undergoing additional upgrades right now to meet water quality issues, but also to be able to be used for aquifer storage and recovery. But along with Sonoma Water, each of our customers, as Jennifer mentioned, have some local resources of their own, and in Sonoma Valley, it's all groundwater. Santa Rosa has two wells. Rohnert Park has a significant groundwater system that they depend on. So it's just not Sonoma Water. But also, as Grant mentioned, the 3 major groundwater basins, Sonoma Valley, Petaluma Valley, and Santa Rosa Plain, are all under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And so these are governmental agencies that are overseeing the sustainability of those groundwater basins. So any of these projects that would be aquifer storage and recovery are going to be coordinated with these agencies. And they're going to have to be to do exactly what you said, to protect that water that's being put in the ground for later use, or to replace water that was pumped out. Maybe like in the summer, there was some pumping going on, and then in the winter, putting that water back so it's not depleting those basins. And I think your first question is, how does it play a role in our groundwater system? And it's going to play a huge role in how we leverage the winter water that we've been talking about, this unimpaired natural flow that's in the system right now, not water that's being released from the reservoirs, but just unimpaired flow that we can leverage before it goes out into the Pacific Ocean. And so how can we put it in some of these groundwater basins? How can we use water that, get water down to Marin Municipal Water District in the winter so that they can preserve storage in their reservoirs? So as Grant mentioned, I don't think, there's not going to be this giant silver bullet like Lake Sonoma. I wish there was. It's going to be putting together all these tools in the tool shed to, create that big resiliency. It's just not one project. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you.
These are all great questions, and we have time for 1 or 2 more.
Grant, I seem to recall that Marin County was looking at the feasibility of desalination. So, moving forward, what role, if any, do you see desalination playing in our future?
Did everyone hear that question? What role will desal play in our future? The thing about desal, it's one of the potentials. And right now, Marin County in particular is looking at a brackish water desal opportunity aimed in Petaluma River. That would be one that's less salty than ocean water and bay water. The thing about desal is it's quite energy intensive, and there's a byproduct that you have to concern yourself, which is a brine, to dispose of it. So when you start stacking these up, you start looking about efficiencies and cost benefits, it doesn't always pan out. But if you are in serious need and you need an increment, the thing about desal, you also have to run them. To make the investment work, it has to be run more often, and you can't just intermittently turn them on and off. That's a difficult thing to do with desal, but it is being studied. The good news is, as a region, we are doing a good deal of studies to look at more resilience, and desal is always in the mix to be evaluated. It just does not quite get to some of the easier and probably more productive aquifer storage projects in this region. I'm looking at probably a groundwater bank, a regional groundwater bank located somewhere where we could actually do the work that we're talking about that would be contributed in. Marin's concern right now is that they would take water from us, pay a premium, and then not need it, or have their reservoirs spill. And it's a legitimate concern. If we had a groundwater bank regionally here that we could contribute toward, and this is not my idea, I could look at Dick Dowd back there who said this years ago, that we need Marin to be investing in our infrastructure. He was right then, he's even more correct now. So that's a long-winded answer saying that we're going to look for the most efficient, probably the most cost-effective projects. We are using firms that are in alignment, the same data, the same information, so you can make an apple-to-apple comparison. And you've heard how important rates are, so we're trying to be rate conscious and make good long-term decisions that are going to pay off and make us more resilient.
Thank you, Grant. We've got one last question and maybe a half a one after that.
With PG&E just recently announcing they're not going to fill Pillsbury due to perceived earthquake risk, how will that affect Sonoma Water?
Okay, this is going to be probably three of us actually answer. I knew you were going to ask that question, by the way. As a board member for Cal Trout, how could you not? The easiest thing for me to do right now would be to hand this over to the PG&E rep who's here, and I'll give her the opportunity. But I think while you're considering whether you want to respond or not, I'll acknowledge, and we have been working on this eventuality for some time now. Mark Milan, who's back there, is helping to message on how important Potter Valley is to our region. It's very important. We relied on it for many, many years. It has now become much more of a water supply facility than it is an energy facility. And as a result, the latest news about new seismic safety concerns really sends a message out across our region, which is there's a liability at Lake Pillsbury. PG&E is acknowledging that. They've, to my knowledge, sent off information to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and they've said not so fast because there's a process you need to go through to look at your license. So it's highly complex information, and there's multiple partners. There's two very important watersheds. The Eel, Russian River watersheds are critical, is my point of view in the state. We have got to do a better job of making sure our elected officials know that the Eel and the Russian need to be made whole through this process. And we're committed to finding a solution that will benefit both watersheds. Cal Trout's going to be a part of that. And as a board member, I would ask you to please use your influence there to have Cal Trout support what we've all worked on and dedicated a two-basin solution, which is going to divert water, like we've talked about, in the wintertime at the Eel when it's available, and pull back and not divert water in the summer in those windows, and see if we can't find a pathway forward. That's what we're striving for. We've got funding from DWR to be looking at some alternatives. And talking to your staff, who I have a high regard for, we as a collective region need to find a pathway that's going to be sustainable and one that respects both watersheds. And I'm confident it's out there. I wonder sometimes whether the politics and the high stakes and just the nature of stakeholders digging in might make that difficult to achieve. It's going to be a long time, a long time. You're going to hear about Potter Valley and the outcome of that in years to come, I can assure you. It will not be something done overnight. We're fighting to keep a legitimate diversion that we can use to get into Lake Mendocino and meet minimum in-stream flows for fish. That's what we use the water supply for, is to help the fisheries. We've made a $60 million investment on Dry Creek, and if you haven't been out on those tours, Brad Sherwood here, our assistant general manager, has been organizing those for city council members. I would like to invite the Alliance out to look at our system. Marlene and the team, we've talked about this. Please come out and take a look at how we do, because the fish need our help. The Russian River is our natural pipeline. We got to take care of it. It's what provides the clean drinking water for us, and so that's a mandate that we've got. And so I'm counting on Caltrans to work cooperatively with us. I know we're winding down. I don't know if anybody at PG&E wants to give more of an update. Melinda, are you here still?
Melinda took off.
I would have too, yeah. Good thing.
Good timing.
Yeah. Pardon?
Drought.
Drought?
Nobody's asked you that question.
They
I know
haven't.
It's a dynamite one, but is the drought over and what then?
You know, when we last met, this morning said, I have one question for you. I'm like, oh, this is going to be, is the drought over? But it wasn't. She was talking about other things. I can say right now, the difficulty we've had, and I know you just want a straight answer, the governor rescinded the drought declaration. We, on the 18th, when we go to the rates, we're also going to be rescinding our drought emergency declaration. So in that regard, yes. But I think it's been enough now. I've been through 5 droughts in my short tenure here. And they're multi-year. They're usually 2 or 3 years. So we usually have something. War Springs Dam was a result of the 1976-77 drought. That's why we went for it. There's always going to be a need for us to manage in extremes. That's what water managers are going to have to do. We've got to be able to do multi-year drought and raging atmospheric river influenced winters and everything in between. This team that we brought here today, I brought them here because I wanted you to see who does the work. And every day they work hard at making sure that we're that we're fulfilling our mission, both for sanitation, water supply, energy-related work. So the droughts are real. I see a long-term continuum here where we've had more dry years than wet years, and they're usually going to be extremes. They're going to be real dry and real wet, and we've got to get resiliency in there. So I know I didn't let you guys talk about Potter Valley. Do you have anything else to say? PG&E took off. I think we're going to take off too then.
I want to thank you very much. I know there's many more questions, and I think Grant just said that he and his team would stick around for as long as it takes to answer those. I wanted to also thank Jennifer Burke for coming and giving her insight on what's happening in the So let's have a great round of applause for the panel and the team.
Yes.
I wanted to acknowledge our elected officials, Gerard Judice from the City of Roanoke Park Council Member, and Mayo, Assembly Member Conley, and Mark Staff, City of Santa Rosa Council Member. So next month, join us for another great program on the state of education with Amy Carter, Sonoma County Superintendent of Schools, on Wednesday, May 3rd. Thank you all for coming. If you're a guest, I ask that you consider joining the Sonoma County Alliance. Sonoma County Alliance is a business advocacy organization. Our strength is our voice, and our voice is our membership. Please join Sonoma County Alliance and contribute your voice. Thank you. Have a great day.
You